Hello, and welcome to Based on Facts, where fiction and superstition meet logic and scientific facts. Here on 95.7 FM, WELT, broadcasting from the Allen County Public Library. I'm here with Uriah, my wife. My name is Chris Rex, and today we will be discussing Pride in the Fort. All right, and essentially what I'm talking about here is the Pride March that we just did last weekend, actually last Saturday, the 23rd, and essentially what happened was there were a number of people. I don't even know what the final count was. I'm sure it was probably close to 1,000.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. A little over 1,000.
Yeah,
That's a good amount of us.
So about 1,000 people gathered to try to celebrate gay pride, or at least support those who wish to have the same equalities that everyone else is currently getting. So we joined them along with the group that we're involved with, Free Thought, and we marched with a little sign and some buttons and things, and we basically marched through downtown Fort Wayne and tried to raise awareness of the LGBT crowd and anyone else who is associated with those types of people. So we figured it was a good idea. We had a number of people associated with the group that are of a different sexual orientation than heterosexual, and so I think it was kind of a great thing to get out there and try to raise awareness about some of the injustices that are still being done, even in today's day and age. And that was no more apparent than once we stepped foot into the area where they were gathering for this Pride March, right in front of Headwaters Park. We were gathering right there on Clinton Street, and sure enough, you look across the road, and you see this group of religious protesters that have a megaphone, and they are sitting here shouting some Bible verses, as well as some very nasty things, some very personal insults in some cases.
And really, that's what makes you different from being a protester, peaceful protesting. No matter what organization you're part of, everyone's got a right to protest. But when you protest, you generally need to do it peacefully. Protesters don't have any right to break laws. You have your own legal limits that you have to follow. That's just the way it works. Protesters, for instance, let's talk about the Westboro people. They were protesting funerals, and Obama actually had to pass a law that limited protesting how many feet within a funeral, because it was becoming a problem. So as an example, protesters, you can protest, you have free speech, but you've got to maintain your legal rights and respect other people's legal rights. These people weren't exactly doing that, and which is why I like to use the term not, religious protesters. They're really a religious hate group, because that's how they were coming off. It wasn't just a protesting, we don't approve of your behavior, we think it's wrong, we want to help you if you'll accept it, that's why we're here. That's one thing. But like he said, there was a lot of personal insult and personal attacks. It wasn't a hate the sin and not the sinner type thing. They were definitely attacking both. And it was, I was really hoping we were past it, but apparently not.
Yeah, no, it's on their posters that they were hanging up and reciting from, just one of their biggest ones was the homo sex is sin, which is fine. I didn't have much of a problem with that. But when they're sitting here and kind of going into detail and describing how they're going to escort you to the gates of hell, that's where it starts crossing the line a little bit.
When they say you're going to escort you to the gates of hell, and they say that you're going to burn in fiery pain forever in darkness, that's when you start getting into some real medieval biblical language that I don't even hear from a lot of religious people today, which is why I refer to them as just a hate group, because that's all they are.
Yeah, and it's just, when it comes to those sorts of things, you almost think of it as an indirect way of threatening violence. I mean, it's maybe not necessarily a direct threat that they're going to do that particular action, but it's definitely wishing that kind of bad behavior or bad action upon you.
Yep.
And I struggle seeing that because, in all my dealings with protesters of any kind, it's hard pressed for me to actually think of a situation where I threatened physical harm to come upon somebody.
You've never threatened physical harm on anyone, even when people were in your face.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is that there's a way to protest or argue or have a discussion, and then there's a way not to do it. And the way not to do it is to endanger somebody's life. And these people were clearly doing that. And it's really hard for me to grasp that concept, especially when you are, quote, a religious person, because I would have thought that you would have gained some sort of semblance of morals or ethics from your religion. And this is clearly not the case in some of these radical groups.
Define how they were threatening lives.
We'll get to that later.
Okay, fair point.
We'll get to that later. So I'm just kind of throwing this out here as a general, summary of how the Pride March went. What we'll kind of reapproach some of these concepts here later on. But have Uriah here because she's great with history-related things, and
why am I always the history buff on here?
I know,
I'm not even a history buff person.
You know what? You're more of a history buff than I am because I forget what happened 2 hours ago. So if you could enlighten us on some of the history behind some of this Pride March stuff, and maybe even the LGBT movement in general, I guess.
Well, fun fact, we have our Pride March here in Fort Wayne in July. Most of the other states have it in June. And the reason it's in June is because June 28th in, what year was it? 1969. That was the famous date of the Stonewall Inn riots. And that was in Greenwich, New York. And some of you may have known that Obama has actually made the Stonewall Inn a historical site commemorating that particular day and instance as kind of a victory and a turning point for the LGBT community. And Stonewall Inn was actually a local neighborhood bar that people would frequent, and a lot of the patrons were of the LGBT community. Now, at that point, homosexuality and lesbianism, all of that were severely looked down on, and it wasn't a crime punishable in any way at that point in America, thank God, but they definitely were hated on. They were discriminated against in a lot of ways, and there was just no way to protect themselves because, funny that, they didn't have direct rights in that manner. They did, but then they didn't, and that's what, this is an example of how the community treated them, and in some cases still treats them. So what the police did is they were constantly raiding this bar for no good reason, whether they were just looking for an excuse to shut it down, whether it was occupancy or were they doing something wrong with their liquor license or permit, just whatever it was, they were constantly badgering these people just based on their sexual orientation. And that's wrong. That's discrimination. That's profiling. It's everything you can think of. It's wrong. And they got sick of it. And so that day they fought back. And essentially they won. And that was a big turning point, and it got a lot of publicity, and it was just a big instance where the world got to see in real bright light what's happening in their face, and it was really a great thing. So that's why in this country June is the month where you celebrate Pride, but in Fort Wayne, Headwaters Park, where our Pride March takes place, is home to a lot of festivals. Fort Wayne in the summertime becomes festival central, and I'm talking every week there's something different starting in June, and we just have too much going on, which is why that second weekend, I think it's like the second weekend, is always when we do Pride, which is right after our Three Rivers Festival, which is another huge festival because that's our area. That's our, what do you call that? Region, Three Rivers. We have Three Rivers Bang, Three Rivers this, Three Rivers that, Three Rivers Festival. It's what we are, because our Three Rivers meet in Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
But that's why we do it in July. We're not stupid, like some people say, or can't get anything right. No, we just have a lot going on, and we can't make it in June.
And to be fair, I actually looked this up. There are a number of other gay pride festivals here in the U.S., including in Texas and in other places. I think Missouri was another one of the places that take place in September, actually. So they're not even within a couple months of
I would personally
the
have
original.
liked September. I had a great time. It was awesome seeing 1,000 people out there. It was awesome because as we were walking about a 2-mile march through downtown, and we have the Martin Luther King Memorial Bridge that we have here in town. It's a beautiful, beautiful bridge, and on each pillar has one of the famous quotes by Martin Luther King. Very, very moving if you take the time to just walk and read everything about peace, about tolerance, about coexisting and working together for a greater cause. Wonderful bridge, and the fact that our march took us down one side, and then you can go under the bridge, down the trail, and then you come up the other side that came through that bridge. That was personally to me really moving that it took us through it. I'm going to tear up now. Anyway, moving on. It's about 2 miles. People were honking their car horns at us, waving peace signs, and there were a number of people with big rainbow flags out their window in support. Oh, it was great. It was a real good time. But yeah, so we do our deal in July. It was hot. So September, I am all for September. I would love it to be moved to September. I was a lobster by the end of it. So.
But the other thing that was kind of interesting, this website that I was looking at in particular, just because I think it was the first result on the Google search list, because that's always, obviously the best thing to click on. This was the gaypridecalendar.com, I believe it was. And surprisingly enough, you know what? Fort Wayne was not on that calendar.
Huh.
At all. And I think part of that's because the organizations that are trying to do the Pride March here in town are not as big as some of the other organizations in some of the other larger cities around the U.S.
Well, this is only like the 4th or 5th Pride March we as Fort Wayne have done. We're still, this is a very young tradition for us.
It's just, I would have thought at least it would be on this website, but it certainly wasn't. And,
I would have to see if Indianapolis does a Pride March and if that would be on that website.
I was thinking I looked, but yeah, I'd have to look back at that again and double check. Yeah.
I wonder if there are certain ex-governors of ours that had an influence on that. You never know. Always good stuff.
Wink, wink. Yeah.
Not getting political in this episode.
Right.
That'd be bad.
Yeah. We're trying to stray away from that. But no, she mentioned the MLK Bridge. It's a beautiful bridge. I love that bridge. It does so many wonderful things. Isn't that the bridge that lights up at various times of the year?
So basically, when it looks like a suspension bridge, it's not. But with the structure, if you looked at it from the distance, it would look like a suspension bridge. But where the suspension cables would be, they're lights. And so at night, it'll light up different colors. And what was really rather touching is when the Orlando shooting happened, that whole bridge was lit up in rainbows for Pride March. It was lit up in rainbows. It was really, really cool to see our community just being there and doing something, some sort of sign that we care.
I think they did something similar for the France terrorist attacks.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep, they can change the colors for their...
for the French flag?
Yeah, for the French flag.
Yeah.
So really
it's just, it's kind of cool, but even just having the Gay Pride march around the MLK Bridge, for those of you who haven't actually walked around that entire area is just littered with MLK quotes.
Yeah. And
it's incredible how many of those are actually applicable to the current situation. MLK was all about trying to create equality with African Americans here in the United States. And now we're in a similar situation. How many years ago was that? Wasn't that the early 70s maybe? MLK was around? Or was it longer ago than that? I can't even remember if it was 60s or 70s.
I'm pretty sure Martin Luther King was like late 50s, early 60s.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm off by a decade.
50s.
Okay, cool. So within 60 years, we have a similar situation arising to where a group of people is experiencing a lot of injustices just based on who they are. And in this case, we're not looking at skin color. In this case, we're looking at sexual orientation or gender identity. Those are the two big things that we're really focusing on right now. And it's frustrating to see that kind of discrimination going on when I thought we were past all of this.
Yeah. Because yes, racial discrimination was outlawed in mid-1950s, 1952. That's not that long ago. It's 2016, 1952. Not that long ago. And you would think that in that couple decades, 6 decades, we'd be able to look at somebody, appreciate them, and accept them for who they are, as long as they're not hurting themselves or other people. That's always been the deciding factor. Are you hurting somebody? No. Are you hurting yourself? No. Well, who cares? You know, you can't sit here and say, well, I feel like a mass murderer, so I want to be a mass murderer. No, 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 that's illegal. Can't do that. But, sorry, you're attracted to a man, and you're a man, or you're attracted to a woman, you're a woman. You're not hurting anybody. If anything, you're finding fulfillment and meaning in your life, and you're doing the same thing for somebody else. Isn't that the highest form of living?
No. You know what? I personally do not like spicy food. I cannot consume it at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start passing laws against spicy food because I find it particularly distasteful. So I want to make sure nobody else is exposed to that distasteful stuff.
Now here's something. Purely hypothetical. This is not my true beliefs at all, so I'm just making a hypothetical situation like you. I really, really don't like the idea of Jews. I don't like what they stand for. Their religion is so archaic, and it dates back to so long ago. I mean, what's the point? It's almost as old as, Greek mythology. Those gods weren't real, so their god can't be real. I'm not okay with that, so I want to make laws to abolish that. Oh, wait. You can't do that. You can't look at somebody for who they are and say that they can't have something that another person have. You can't infringe on someone's civil rights based on who they are as a person. And that's the issue. That is the issue with the LGBT community as it is now. It started out as something completely different, and I think people have a real strong misconception about what the real issue is going on here, and it's holding the community back. And that's why we do these marches. That's why we raise this awareness, because people need to know what's going on, because that day, last Saturday, this Pride March opened my eyes to just how much people don't know, don't care, or are actively trying to sabotage what's going on. Because they know and they care enough to not have it a part of their community because they're that close-minded and hateful.
And to be fair, I did feel a little bad just doing the march, because the march almost seemed like a spontaneous type of thing.
Which it was. And this has been planned months, years in advance.
But it was treated as much more of a spontaneous thing than the Three Rivers Festival, which was just 2 weeks ago or so. Just because of how police shut down traffic. Because basically what they did was they shut down traffic in certain areas of downtown for when the parade was moving through.
But that's the thing.
And then reopened it during the moments that there were like big gaps in the parade. And so it was much more of a transitory kind of event.
It's a parade, though. That's the difference.
Right. It's still a parade.
Our big festivals, Three Rivers festivals, things like that, they have big parades, and they shut down the streets for hours. But the Pride March, it wasn't going to take that long. So during the actual march, police cars pulled up to streets, and they blocked off traffic for however long the march went. This is a very terrible comparison, but it's accurate. It's almost like a very long funeral parade. They go through, and sometimes you got to sit at that light forever because they have, some lucky fellow who passed away has a lot of friends. Awesome. But that's what they had to do with us. It was a Pride March. It wasn't a parade. So we just went our route, and they were closed off when we were walking, and then they just opened back up. And it did seem spontaneous and more of a inconvenience on the city, and I hope that's not the message that was given.
Yeah, because I completely understand as a commuter through downtown to be frustrated when you're stuck in one place for 20 minutes to allow these groups of people to go through, especially when you're on your way to work or whatever you're trying to get to. Like, I understand that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to shut off your flow of traffic there, but we're kind of trying to bring attention to a topic, and this is the way that we're trying to do that.
And it's not like they didn't have warning. We've had signs and flyers,
so
they knew it was happening.
Right. It's just I really do hate inconveniencing other people.
Yeah.
And you saw a lot of this kind of apologetic or respectful behavior among a number of the people involved with the Pride March, as far as the supporters are concerned. When police officers or anyone else otherwise, maybe one of the organizers of the event, would give instructions or suggestions to one of the people taking part in the Pride March, they would certainly follow it.
Immediately.
Because we would try to respect their judgment as much as possible. And although I can't speak for everyone, but everyone that I saw seemed to be very, very cooperative with authorities. Yeah. And I love seeing that.
Not just that, but there was also a genuine appreciation for any officer who was working. There was a lot of thank yous, and just lots of thank you. They just this whole crowd of 1,000 people walking by, and almost every other person was just thank you, thank you, thank you. It was really cool.
Yeah, because we did have a lot of law enforcement there. They definitely really showed up and really presented a force that was formidable to help protect and make sure that no terrible stuff goes down during this entire event because of what happened down in Orlando, down in Florida at that nightclub. And so security was heightened regarding this event. And it was great. It was great seeing those guys put forth the effort and being willing to secure the place so we can have this kind of demonstration.
And it could not have been fun. Like I said, it was hot. They were in full uniform. You could see. But, we had some great organizations there, like the Salvation Army. I know they have strong religious backgrounds, but they were there giving out free cupcakes and water. Yeah. And they had frozen the water. It was ice cold and just giving them out, anyone who was walking. And that's all they were doing. They had little scriptures on the bottles. That's cool. That's awesome. But they weren't with a large mega horn shouting, or they weren't up in people's faces. Just a simple, here's water, it's hot out. That was cool.
Yeah. And honestly, what I would have loved to do, even though it wouldn't be allowed, but I would have loved to go up to each one of the officers there and hand them a little mini Blizzard from Dairy Queen, because they definitely could have benefited from the cold. And they were definitely a little grumpy, having to stand out there in that heat with all their clothing and armor and everything.
They weren't in full body armor, but they were ready.
Yeah, they were in the SWAT team affair there, but it was still very, very unpleasant for them, because it was unpleasant for me, and I was just in regular shorts, regular shirt and shorts. So, but it was great to see them there and see the effort they were putting into making sure everything went smoothly.
Yeah, which why I thought it was so cool. There was just so much appreciation shown to them.
Yeah, and that was great. It's just that there were certain instances, most notably near the beginning and the end. Like the entire march itself was fine. We basically just traveled around downtown and looped around back to Headwaters Park, and it was great. Everything went pretty well.
The only downside is about halfway into the march, that's when we saw these religious hate groups, and it was interesting because they were at the very beginning, and I thought that's where they were going to stay. But about halfway through, we turned a corner and they were sitting, protesting and holding their signs and shouting right in the middle of our actual march, and I thought that was a bit much. It's one thing if you want to be at the hub of this Pride event, which is Headwaters Park. There's booths inside. It's not just a march that we did. Headwaters had a big festival inside for Pride. There's a lot of education that goes on there, a lot of support. There's music, there's food. It's a big event here in Fort Wayne. For 3 days we have Pride. But I thought they would be across the street or maybe just outside of it. But no, they followed us through the second half of the entire march. And I was floored, really. And these people were sitting right next to the Martin Luther King Memorial Bridge, spouting such hatred at the base of such a peaceful, tolerant reminder. And I was floored, because I don't think people take the time to appreciate their monuments in their cities. Because I know Fort Wayne isn't super remarkable, but we do have our spaces that they mean a lot. And when you look at your own city and the monuments that you have, and you just take a second to think about why it's there, and just 2 seconds, just remind yourself how great whatever it is that you have, how great it is. It's a nice feeling. The fact that there's something there to remind everyone of good things, and just this bridge is such a great thing to me. And just to have them sit there and just spout this hatred over, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrible.
And what was most interesting is that the particular religious group who went to the midway point of this march, and then of course went back to the beginning of the march, which really they only did that because it was really quite a short distance from the beginning to the middle of the march. Yeah. So they're really quite intelligent in that respect.
Yeah, because it starts like here, and then we went up and around and through town, and then we had to go down this street. But then right about here is where the bridge is, and you can just, cut across from our starting point to this bridge, which is about halfway. Yeah. And so they just kind of went back and forth here, and they really ignored our whole spiel over here.
Yeah. So, I mean, majority of the march was great, nice and silent. It's just that one little bit in the middle and the start and the end that really had the issues. And it was funny because as we were even passing through the end of it, or through that middle part, I recognized those people.
Yes, there were two groups there. One was, I believe, a full-blown hate group, and that's who I will refer them to, hate group.
Yeah, very akin to the Westboro Baptist.
Yeah, it really is. I think they have a little bit more, I don't want to say respect because they had no respect, but I think I would say they had a little bit more restraint, because if they even took one more step forward in what they're already doing, I think they probably would have been arrested or booted out, because Westboro has a history of being arrested and removed physically because they are violating rights and whatever their protester rights is. So this group was that close.
Yeah.
To being removed because they're violating rights. So that's what I mean. They are a hate group. But the second group, I'm just going to call them religious fanatics, because they weren't quite as aggressive and cruel and hateful as this hate group, but they were definitely something to behold. Very closed-minded, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah. But it was just nice to see them again. The first time I'd seen this particular group was actually at a Magic Mike live type of event at the Coliseum, Memorial Coliseum here in town. Our
our city hockey team was also playing. I think they were in like I think
playoffs or something?
Yeah, they were in the playoffs, that's it. Yeah. So there was like a big game, a lot of people were there.
So we had dual purposes going on there at the Coliseum, because it's a rather large place. And the Magic Mike event was basically an event which was a male review. And then we had the Comets playing hockey there. And this religious group showed up out front and basically tried to simultaneously protest both events.
Yeah.
Having signs that said, "Do you worship sports?" And so definitely catching the Comets crowd. And then at the same time, they're stopping people and being like, "Hey, are you going inside to see a bunch of half-naked dudes run around?" And funny enough, they posed the question to me, and I'm like, well, yeah. I'm trying to learn from these masters of seduction.
For the record, we were there for my stepsister-in-law. It was kind of a belated 21st birthday party. We went out, had dinner, and it was just a huge gag. It was funny. And we had all watched the movie. Her mom likes Channing Tatum. It was just fun. That's the whole point of it. But it was rather amusing just to have a little short story on this, and then we'll get back to Pride. Is this guy decided to ascertain the point of, every night I go home to my loving wife and kids and family, and what do you go home to? If this is what you do at night, what do you go home to? And that's when I found him again, and I just had to take his arm. Like, he comes home to me, his wife, and it just silent.
Yeah. It's funny how easy it is to silence some of these people.
Yeah, it was rather
It's almost too easy sometimes, but
But this group that was at the Coliseum for that event was also at Pride. They're at a lot of big events. When Trump came and he did his rally at the Coliseum here in Fort Wayne, they were there protesting. When I saw that, I'm thinking, what do they not protest?
Yeah.
To be quite honest, what do they not hate?
right,
Whatever.
right.
So, but back to Pride, they were there. The march itself was great. A lot of people, a lot of support. But that was there, and it really brings to light, because those are the extreme example of what the LGBT community is facing in this day and age. And the main point that they were shouting, besides all the hate, the actual intelligible point they were making was, this is a religious issue. No, it's not. If that is the one message that I could get our world to understand, is this isn't about religion. This is about civil rights. That's why we do this. That's why they do this, and we support them, because I believe everyone should have equal rights. That's what this country is founded on. That's the right thing to do, and I don't need a religion to tell me what's right and what's wrong. And I don't think a religion should dictate, how do I say this? I'm not trying to be mean, but if a religion tells you to hate somebody, then you need a new religion.
Yeah, no, that's what it comes down to. And
hate somebody for who they are. You need a new religion.
For disliking somebody for the actions that they've done, that's one thing.
That's an action.
For disliking somebody for who they are is something entirely different.
And in quasi-defense of religious people, that's why they say, hate the sin, not the sinner. But you can't say the sinner is the sin. There is nowhere in the Bible that says that a sinner is the sin. That you're supposed to hate the sin, not the sinner. But I'm sorry, a person being who they are is not sinful.
Yep.
Because if you come into contact like that, that's called a mental illness.
Right. That's the thing, is that we start getting into what defines an actual psychosis.
Mm-hmm. But that's why
where you need medication.
But that's why this country has that. There is a big old list of mental illness and medications to treat this. If you are schizophrenic, I am so sorry. If you know someone who is schizophrenic, that's difficult. But that's who they are. And it's unfortunate that humanity is still trying to perfect ourselves through time so we don't have to deal with that. But, that's a mental illness. You can't help that. But we do have treatments and medications to manage it. But do we hate you? Do you not get the same rights? Yeah. No, you get the same representation. You get the same medical funding. You get the same thing that a healthy person who doesn't have a mental illness gets. You get the same thing.
Provided you're taking your 100 milligrams of lithium or whatever it is you have to take every day. Because the moment you're off your drugs, game's up.
So this brings up a point that a lot of people think that homosexuality is a mental illness. And that's why they say, well, we hate the sin, we hate the illness. Like alcoholism. People say alcoholism is an illness. And personally, I don't believe that. I believe it's a terrible, terrible thing. I believe it's a terrible addiction. Just like any drug, it's an addiction. But you hate the alcoholism, you don't hate the alcoholic. That's true. But there are medications and groups, and you overcome that, because that's not who you are. Funny enough, that's not who you are. So anyway, back to people think that being gay is a mental illness. Well, funny story. If we go back, just a rather brief history lesson here. We'll do ancient Greek culture, early Roman culture, so early on in life that LGBT community was widely accepted. In Greek, in Roman, LGBT is prominent in everywhere, all around the world it's prominent. And the only time that it became an issue is, what year was that? Yes. It was when the church came in. It's when Christian emperor, oh my gosh, what was his name? I can't think of the name off the top of my head. It was Constantinius. Christian emperor Constantinius decided to make homosexuality punishable by death. That's it. So everything was pretty normal, accepted, It wasn't a crime. You weren't going to die. You weren't going to be condemned to hellfire and damnation. None of that until the church intervened. Until Christianity became a big deal and it affected power. Power over people, power over cities, power over countries. The church got real power, and they made homosexuality punishable by death. And then it just leaked all through history. In Spain with the Inquisition, it happened in English Reformation, it happened in anywhere in Italy with the rise of Catholicism and everything. It became a cultural deal that you were religious. All of Europe, everywhere, religious. That's the way it was. And it just became so prominent that our leaders were so directly tied to religion. I mean, if you look at England, you had the king, you had the queen, and then you had religion, and they had to work together, because if one did something that the religion didn't like, they would butt heads. In Spain, it was that way, and that's insane. That's why, after all of this time, the church got so much power, and we had to step back and say, like, whoa. United States, separation of church and state. And that spread all throughout because it was just too much. It became the church was ruling the world. And honestly, that wasn't working out too well. As much as some people would like to say, oh, well, we need to put God back in our schools, we need to put God back in our government. It's been done before. And it's ended badly.
It got us nowhere, really, is what it did. And so it's really disappointing to hear that kind of movement being encouraged, because where did it get us 2,000 years ago? Oh, that's right, nowhere.
Yeah.
Nowhere has ever been gotten by religion.
In Europe, it prosecuted a lot and killed a lot of anyone in the LGBT community. It killed anyone who was more of the scientific mind.
Who dared to speak against the church in any way, shape, or form, you were done for.
If you go back a little bit more, the Renaissance, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, they were heretical. It was whatever their science work was not right, and so it was pushed back. That's how science is where it is right now, because if we didn't have the church way back when they were prosecuting science, we would be so much farther. And I dare anybody on here to say different, because the church controlled the world for a certain amount of time, and they prosecuted science that is accepted today started back then, and it was almost squished. Because of the church.
And that's why it's nothing short of hypocrisy in the highest regard when you see a place like Hobby Lobby, which is a store I love. It's a great place. You can find so many unique things there, but it's nothing short of ironic, actually, that they're also selling a number of Leonardo da Vinci's little micro inventions. And it's like, well, that's kind of interesting, because had he actually been allowed to realize the true potential behind any of those things several hundred years ago, we would be in a much different place right now.
Again,
technologically
ironic.
Speaking. Yeah, I guess it was ironic, yeah.
It is a little ironic, but I'm sorry, the church, and I'm talking church as a whole, every religion, I shouldn't say the church, I should just say religion bears the burden of holding back science, technology, and reasonable thinking for a good chunk of time in history. Doesn't do it so much now, but it still has a huge influence trying to hold science and technology back. And here's a funny thing, because early 19th century, guess who was around? Sigmund Freud. I know you all know who Sigmund Freud is and thought he was a whack job. He wasn't. Sigmund Freud had some pretty crazy theories about moms and things like that, but his theories were founded on research. He was actually a well-known scientist, and his work was true. His work was right. He did the studies, and that's what they came out to be. But he had a hand in this, but more importantly, Magnus Hirschfeld was also a famous psychologist at the time, and together they helped. It was mostly Hirschfeld, but Freud did have some hand in this. They founded the very first Institute of Sexual Science. And this institute was the largest library conceived that documented the LGBT history as it was at that point. There was hundreds and hundreds of research documents and books all in this institute studying our sexual health. and the culture of gay people and lesbians. And that is a really important science, because at the time, people thought that was a mental illness, that it was wrong. And this was in Germany, and it was amazing because this institute was a symbol of tolerance. And this institute had research that said gays are normal, that LGBT, there's not a mental illness. The studies are right here. It was right there. And at the same time in England, there were literalists like Oscar Wilde, who was gay, and he was being prosecuted. We all love Oscar Wilde. He's hilarious. He's smart too. And yeah, he was getting prosecuted because he was gay. And it's sad, because we had this science institute, and what happened? This was started in the early 50s, but what else happened? Early 50s, no, sorry, it wasn't started in the early 50s. It was started, and then in the early 50s, that's when, early 40s, why do I keep saying 50s? Early 40s, rise of Hitler. Because Hitler came in, and he burned it to the ground. Burned it to the ground, burned all the research, anything we had accumulated at that point in time, gone, poof. And that's what religion and radicalism does.
And it's kind of making me wonder if included among those works, if they were studying sexuality so much, if there might not have been some sort of published studies on the female orgasm. Because as I was just presenting to my students here this week in class, the female orgasm was really thought to be a myth until about 40 years ago, where we finally published some real research on the whole thing. So prior to that, it was really something that was just kind of thrown around as a funny idea, because nobody really ever saw any utility in it. There's really no advantage as far as copulation is concerned, or the process of reproduction, that there's really no advantage to the woman having this happen. So we didn't see a physiological need for it, so we just kind of thought it was hearsay or rumor, or something that really didn't exist at all.
Yeah, let that sink in. That's not just a joke or something funny. That was real. People actually thought that women couldn't experience that. That's a real thing. So just take a second, let that sink in. Not a joke, not just some funny snide comment your buddy makes. No, that people really thought that was real.
And stemming from that whole belief, from many thousands of years ago, you'll notice that there are still, even in modern day, some tribes who practice certain methods that women wouldn't particularly care for in modern times. In fact, my wife was kind enough to show me a movie that actually kind of looked at that a little bit more. The Green Inferno, I believe it was called.
We were watching some crazy psycho thriller called The Green Inferno. It's about a group of students who go into the jungle to try and save the rainforest, but they are captured by some headhunting cannibalistic tribes, and yeah, it's them trying to escape so they don't get eaten. Really crazy, messed up thriller. It was really good if you just want to be on edge and potentially grossed out, but this...
Yeah, it was done by Eli Roth, who's also done the Hostel movies, so gives you any idea of the suspense and gore.
It's very gory, so I warn you, it is very gory, but this particular tribe, like many, they practice female genital mutilation, and it's just
yeah, which is to say, it takes circumcision to the next level. And in the female state, basically what we're talking about is in the male, you have the penis and the foreskin covering the penis. Well, the penis is basically the same thing as a clitoris in females. And so as such, there is a little bit of foreskin on the clitoris in the female. So theoretically, you could circumcise a male or a female. It's just that a number of tribes take that to the next step in females and just do away with both the terminal end of the clitoris and the foreskin there. So they just kind of hack it all off.
So for dudes, I know the idea of a circumcision probably sounds painful to you as an adult. You don't feel anything as a kid, so whatever. This whole fight that is starting to rise, whether circumcision is right, whatever. It's healthy for you. It's good for you. Just deal with it. But yeah, imagine a girl having to go through that is the same thing as a male just having the whole, Like Mel Brooks' rabbi says, you nip the tip.
Yeah, yeah. So literally, it takes much more than just loose skin. It takes actual tissue.
Yes.
It takes arteries.
It's
takes some of
very
the spongy tissue that's there.
It's very unsanitary, very dangerous.
Yeah, and so it definitely results in a much higher rate of death for females in those tribes once they have that procedure done, just from infection and bleeding out.
Hack job, not a procedure. Anyway, how do we get on this topic?
Well, it was interesting to look at just some of the influences that religion has done, because we can definitely see how religion influences circumcision in general. But in some cases that can be taken to an extreme and basically try to treat women as a lesser of the two sexes and do things to women that are not exactly equal.
Here's something funny, being women treating as the lesser of the two sexes. I'm sure you all have heard names like Plato and Socrates, and I'm sure there's a couple more of you who know that they lived at the same time. Well, Plato was famous for his Plato's cave. The fact that, his idea that people are in a cave and, they're in the light and all they see is shadows of the real world until they break free and climb out of the cave and they see the real world, whatever. That's Plato's cave. Really interesting read, but not what we're talking about. But he believed that the love between two men was the highest form of true love, and that if you put a woman involved, that is just lust and sin. Plato, people, that's what he said. Plato was totally gay. Yeah, big time. But then there was Socrates who says, I don't think so. He believed, love was love. Just the way it works.
I like that. Love is love. Yeah.
That's what it was. Love is love.
Now, that's within certain constraints. We try to make sure that love is between two humans and not a human and an animal.
We are not PETA.
Not even going to talk about those radical people at this time. But it's definitely something that we are all. This is a proven fact. We are all one race of humans. We are all one species of humans. We are all one subspecies of humans, and so we should be treated as such, and that there really shouldn't be anything to divide us, save for our own preconceptions and biases. And so the more that we can get past all those things and try to move toward a brighter future where everyone is equal regardless of anything, I think that would be a better place to reside in.
Yeah.
But, we could even talk about things that kind of relate to this whole struggle with gay rights, as far as the bathroom topic, so many people freaking out about gender identity in bathrooms. I mean, that's an entirely different topic altogether, but really just comes down to trying to figure out who you are and what kind of person you want to be with. And it's really, I don't feel like it's any of my business to tell you what gender you should be or what gender you should be going after. I mean, I don't feel like that's anything that I can tell you. You can tell me, because you know you. But I don't know you.
Well, and nobody has a right to tell somebody who they are. Nobody has a right to, and no one has the true ability to. Parents can help at some point to help their child develop into be the person they want to be and try and push them in different directions, different sports, different activities to help the child unlock who he really believes he is. And, parents say that, nobody will ever know you like me. I know you. I know who you are. Well, that can only go so far. But once you are out of place with that person for, say 5 or 6 years, and a lot happens in that 5 and 6 years, but, you're separated by multiple states, you do lose touch, just like you would with a friend, and you change right underneath the parent's nose. And it's really you who have to figure out who you are, what you stand for, and who you want to be with.
Yeah.
No one can tell you.
And that's the thing, is that we really need to judge people on their actions and not on who they are or who they look like they are, if I saw Uriah down the street, I would assume that she is a straight girl, but who am I to tell her that she is to be and behave as a straight girl? If her hair was a little shorter maybe and done a little differently, then maybe I would think that she was a lesbian girl. But what's that matter for me? Like, why do I care whether she is straight or lesbian? And that kind of bothered me, seeing that kind of prejudice.
Yeah.
It was most apparent in this one particular scenario I want to kind of bring up here. At the very end of the Pride March, the religious protesters were no longer across the street; they were on the same side of the street.
They were on
so
the
they
opposite.
were right.
They were on the opposite side of the sidewalk. That was the only thing, was a 2.5-foot sidewalk dividing these people.
Right.
The whole Pride March and the hate group and religious fanatics.
And this was right outside the front entrance to Headwaters Park.
Mm-hmm.
And,
the festival that was going on.
Yeah, and so Pride Fest that was going on at the time.
Because we had Pride March and Pride Fest going on. Just to make sure you guys know, Pride Fest is a 3-day deal, and the March kind of is the middle event.
Mm-hmm. And so as we finished the Pride March, there were these religious protesters there, and the extremely aggressive radical group that was there actually reached out to one of the more Middle Eastern looking Pride supporters there, and actually called him out specifically and was like, hey, you were responsible for what happened in Orlando.
Yeah.
And he said this because the Orlando shootings that happened at Pulse that killed 49 people, and this happened over a month and a half ago. This was done by a Middle Eastern looking guy. And so to have a Middle Eastern looking guy taking part in this Pride March, apparently that really caused the religious protesters some sort of grief. And so he called the guy out and he's like, hey, you were responsible for the shooting that happened, that mass shooting that happened.
Yeah, and he didn't say Muslims were responsible. He said,
no,
you are responsible.
Yeah, and that blew my mind. I was like, what?
That's a whole new level of antagonistic behavior than just
How can
protesting.
you do that? That is just insane. And I just saw like the rage fill this poor guy's face.
Yeah.
Like, I'm surprised he didn't lay the guy out. I would have punched him in the face for saying something like that. That is horrible.
It's not like saying, you caused the Holocaust, blah, blah, blah. That is, to me, just as bad. But, sorry, polls happened moments ago. And there's a place called Babylon and After Dark here in town. It's, the typical, gay bar that is here. And it was really quite something. We went there the weekend after the Orlando shooting happened. Just that the very weekend after, they were doing a big benefit, and we went down because we wanted to support the benefit. And people were moved by the huge donation that little old Fort Wayne came up with. And the people who own that bar, they've been in Fort Wayne for almost 25 years. They've been there for so long. It's been just such a hub for the community here in Fort Wayne. And they were going to match up to $5,000 donation. And in mere 2 to 3 hours, we had come up with $6,000 to donate. And so then they put their $5,000. We were $11,000, and by the end of the night, we were just short of $13,000 to send to Orlando, pay for medical bills, therapy, funeral costs, and it's amazing. In one night, little old Fort Wayne came up with that chunk of change, and that was, people were moved. People at this place, they were moved by the donation, by the caring, by the support, and they were also hurt. They were hurt by the shooting. They were hurt by the hate that was showed towards people who were just like them. So for these people to have somebody look at them and say, you caused Orlando, that's not cool, because they take it on a very personal level, because it struck them on a very personal level. And to say something like that so soon, and again in such a personal way, that is beyond antagonistic, that is beyond protesting, or it's a whole new level of just downright hate.
Yeah.
That's really what that is. To tell somebody that something that hurt you so bad and you were responsible for that pain that you were feeling, excuse me, but what is wrong with you? That was a lot of what people were saying from the Pride to these people. That was the main thing. They were saying, there were some swear words, obviously, but it was mostly, what is wrong with you? Are you for real? These people were just flabbergasted that this type of attention was being shown. And it was sad. It was really sad.
And it really upset some of the people there.
There was a little girl. I shouldn't say little, but she was young. She must have been, I don't know, maybe 18, 19. She had her hair dyed in rainbow. She had a cute outfit on. Nothing too crazy. She was there showing her support. And she just started bawling, crying uncontrollably. And, they weren't even... Yeah. It wasn't completely uncalled for. She didn't do anything to be antagonistic. They started looking at her and they started pointing at her and they started calling her evil and started saying that she was going to hell. And I don't think she had ever had such a confrontation like that in her life. Yeah. She just had this very sweet, naive look about her. And again, that could be me just assuming, but that's just the way she came off. And she just started bawling. And a lot of the main committee members of this whole thing came up and tried to comfort her, and then just whole mass of people just came to hug her and just shut out all the hate. It was moving.
Yeah. And that's a very good way to put it. Try to shut out the hate, or at least somewhat counteract it.
Yeah.
But I was just surprised because I honestly felt like we were beyond this level of discrimination and hate. But clearly there's still some sects, some organizations, and some religious organizations in particular that really don't approve of this kind of activity or sexual orientation, so to speak.
And the news did a report. They showed a video of what was going on their spot on the news that night, and it just showed this hate group shouting scripture. And if that's all they were doing, that was one thing, but it gave the people who were watching the news who weren't there a very, very false impression about what happened. And I went on the Fort Wayne TV, Channel 15 News. They posted the story to their Facebook page, and I was reading some of the comments, and, it's one thing to hear such hateful, terrible, terrible, offensive things from a group that is, holding signs and has a megaphone, and just, they're coming off as very radical. They're coming off as closed-minded, very hateful, so it's easy to put that label on them, and it helps you as a person to put up a wall of an attempted understanding. I don't want to say understanding, but it helps you put a wall there to protect yourself, to be like, these people don't know what they're talking about, they're hateful, it doesn't matter. But then the comments on Wayne TV's Facebook post about it, these came from everyday people that I would probably see on the street. And they were saying some absolutely horrible, horrible things. Things like, we needed to spray down our Headwaters Park where the festival was going on because he didn't want anybody to get AIDS. I thought he was just being a troll, but no, he clarified himself. He said he was absolutely serious. And I was floored at something like that coming from just a regular person. And it also brought to issue, all of these people thought, I wish people would leave what goes on in the bedroom in the bedroom. Why do we have to do this? People said, why do we need pride? I think it just shows our children sick behavior. And it just takes me back to people don't understand what's actually going on. Number one, sick behavior. In 1956, psychiatrists got a grant to do a study on gay men, and she had a groundbreaking paper. This was a huge paper that was published. Peer-reviewed journal, whole 9 yards, not just some random survey or test. No. Studied, paper, peer-reviewed, published. And it said that gay men are just as well adjusted, if not more so, than heterosexual men. And it was because of this paper that in 1973, it was sad that it took so many years, but 1973, homosexuality and lesbianism got taken off the mental illness board. So, yeah, that's point one. They said it's sick behavior. It's not sick. We have had studies done. We've tested it. There's nothing wrong with being gay. There's nothing mental illness about it. And two, to sit here and think that this is about something that goes on in the bedroom, keep in the bedroom, what's in the bedroom, it's not that. It's about civil rights. And the fact that people say, oh, their rights weren't infringed upon. Somebody said that their rights weren't violated. Yes, they were. We've been fighting for decades just to have same-sex marriage be legal in all 50 states, and we just got that. And it took this long. And we shouldn't have had to fight for a right that was ours in the first place. And now, because of this, we have several religious freedom reformation laws coming in. And I'm all for freedom of religion. I'm not going to tell somebody they can't believe what they believe. You have your views, I have mine. That's fine. That's what makes America great. We have freedom to the dot. Freedom of religion, freedom of who you are, where you want it, what you want to do, no matter what. But my problem is that these laws, they don't directly say we will allow discrimination of the LGBT. No, they leave large loopholes that would allow people to find that loophole and use it to discriminate against the LGBT community. And if anything was brought to court, they would find and utilize that loophole to make it okay. And they do it on purpose. And that's why so many of those laws have been overturned. And that's why we do these marches. That's why we do these Pride Fests, is because the fight isn't over. We have to help them, support them. They need a voice because people are trying to crush the small voice that they have. Because it's been amazing that a lot of our political leaders are openly gay. So many celebrities are openly gay, showing the support. There's so much support that's coming, and it's finally having a difference. And it can't stop, because if it stops now, everything's just going to slip back to the way it was before.
All right, so you can find every one of our episodes posted to YouTube and Facebook just by typing in Based on Facts in the search bar. This is Chris Rex, my wife Uriah. We thank you for joining us tonight to talk about Pride. So have a great one.